Good afternoon, everyone. I'm not sure, Vanton, how many folks are with us at this point,
I've
but
got,
thank you all for joining us. You continue to let people in. We're delighted that you're here with us. We're gonna have a great conversation this afternoon. Right at 12:04. Give it, Julie, just a few more minutes, and then another minute or two. Everyone here. Uh, 53 and climbing, so. Well, DeShonda, I think you are kicking us off, and I think maybe if
ready to get started?
yeah, I think that would be
great.
good. We're 5 minutes in now.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to AWF's annual Changing Her Story webinar. I'm DeShonda Hughes, Chief Mission Officer with the Atlanta Women's Foundation. This Women's History Month, we recognize the 2025 theme of moving forward together. Today, we are grateful to celebrate the influence and impact of extraordinary women who have transformed their communities through their dedication to education, mentorship, and leadership. You'll soon hear from these incredible women. But first, I'd like to turn it over to our Chief Executive Officer, Kari Love, to share more about the work of the Atlanta Women's Foundation. Kari?
Thank you, DeShonda. As many of you who are joining us today probably know that Atlanta Women's Foundation's mission is to be a catalyst for change in the lives of women and girls. And since our founding 25 years ago, we have nearly invested $30 million into programs here in Atlanta that are uplifting women and girls in our community. In addition to our role as a funder, we serve as an educator and a connector. As an educator, we provide leadership and philanthropic training and commission research that looks into the challenges that are faced by women and girls in Atlanta. As a connector, we bring people together like today through our events and through our designed experiences to empower attendees, expand our impact, and champion grant recipients. When you invest through AWF, your impact for women and girls goes further, creating stronger, more stable families and communities for everyone. I hope that you will consider making a gift to AWF in support of Women's History Month, and you can do that via the link that is found in the comments. You can also sign up for our e-newsletters at atlantawomen.org to keep informed on our work and opportunities to engage with us. Stay tuned after the panel discussion for a few special announcements about things that are coming up later this year. And I'm going to turn it back over now to DeShonda to get us going.
Thank you, Kari. AWF has been honored to support organizations like those represented by our esteemed panelists today. Leaders who have dedicated their careers to ensuring that women and girls have access to safe shelter, financial literacy, education, and more. With decades of experience, these trailblazing women have not only shaped their communities, but have also paved the way for future generations through their mentorship, advocacy, and leadership. It is truly a privilege to learn from them today. So without further ado, I am pleased to introduce our moderator for this conversation, Julie Finn. Julie Finn is an executive coach who helps professional women navigate seasons of change with clarity and confidence. She leads the Navigator Group coaching program to provide a roadmap and support during career pivots and personal transitions. She is the host of Working Mothers Mentor podcast, the mom of 3 teens, and holds degrees from Stanford and Oxford. Julie was also a graduate of our inaugural class of Inspire Atlanta. To learn more about the Inspire Atlanta program, please visit our website at atlantawomen.org. Julie, I turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Deshonda and Kari. We're very excited to be here, and thank you for everyone who's taken the time to be with us today. We have a really interesting panel, so I want to dive right in. I want to start by asking each panelist to just tell us a little bit more about her work and her background, and then we'll dive into learning more about their organizations. So I'm going to start with handing it over to you, Jean, to tell us a little bit more about your background and the work that you do.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jean Douglas. I've had the privilege of working at the Women's Resource Center for 30 years. I've had the privilege of being the executive director for the last 28 years. And I've had the privilege of supporting survivors, of advocating for systemic change, and working to build a community that supports the women and the children that we serve. My background is I'm originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been in Atlanta since the late 1980s. Started my career in corporate, came to the Women's Resource Center as a volunteer, and the rest is history.
That's wonderful, Jean. Thank you very much. And now, Martina, can you tell us a little bit more about your background and your work?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Martina Edwards. I serve currently as president and CEO of Access to Capital for Entrepreneurs, or better known as ACE. I've actually this is my 6th year with ACE, so I spent 5 years serving in a role as strategic partnerships. Background personally about me, I spent the first 9 years of my life in rural Alabama, before spending my formative years in Montgomery, Alabama, which I thought was the big city at that time. And then I actually started my finance career in New York City, which is actually known as the big city. So I've always been focused on access, opportunity, and equity because of personal experiences and just my values. And so the work that we do at ACE sits at the intersection of entrepreneurship, economic mobility, wealth creation, and economic development. So I'm very proud of that work. And just a little bit more about ACE is that we are the largest homegrown, mission-based community development loan fund. And that's a mouthful. And so what we really say at ACE is we give folks a chance when others can't or won't. We're dedicated exclusively to the needs of small businesses in the state of Georgia and providing them with lending capital. We do our work with our 3 kind of secret C's, or whatever. Our secret sauce is capital, coaching, and connections. And so I'll tell you more about our work as we move on throughout the panel, but thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Martina. And so, Grace, we're going to ask you to then tell us a little bit more about the origins of ACE and about your background.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. I'm the founder of ACE, or Access to Capital for Entrepreneurs, which is the organization that Martina is the president and CEO of. ACE was founded by women, for women, in the Southern Appalachian Mountains. Many people may not know that the Southern Appalachian Range starts in North Georgia. And I started ACE with some other women in the back of my house 25 years ago. I famously always say I started it next to the washer and the dryer. And believe it or not, I'm still in the same home. And I have a new washer and dryer, but it's a great work. It started out helping only women in 4 counties, and the reason it was started is because women had all these great ideas about starting businesses, but if they didn't have the family resources or the friends to help them with the capital needs, they couldn't get started. So I worked together with a technical college that's in the area, and we created ACE, Access to Capital for Entrepreneurs.
Well, that's fantastic. We look forward to hearing more about the work that you guys do. And then lastly, Dawn, if you could please introduce yourself and your organization.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm loving the 25 years. House of Dawn is founded 25 years ago as well. I'm the founder and CEO. My name is Dr. Dawn Murray Hartman, and I'm also the founder and CEO of for-profit business that I have, Nonprofit Success, where I help people start their own nonprofits and help them sustain them. House of Dawn, we started with teenage mothers. My first home was helping 4 teenage moms. We continue to expand. We went from having that one little house and 4 moms to having 8 different programs over the years. We have our own subdivision now, and we are also global. So I love what I do. I am passing the torch this year to my daughter, my legacy, and I'm excited about where she's going to continue to take the organization.
Wow. Well, thank you guys so much. It's really quite humbling to be in your midst, and I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about the populations that you serve. So what I'd love to do next is just to set a baseline so that we can understand a little bit more about your work. So if you could please just tell us a little bit more about the work that you do, maybe the 2 most pressing issues that your population faces, and then helping us understand how these very specific issues actually ultimately affect the broader society. So whoever wants to jump in first, again, just to help us unpack the pressing issues that your population faces and how that spills over and ultimately has knock-on effects for the broader society. Anybody want to jump in?
I'll jump in on that one.
Great, Dawn.
I feel like the challenges that we have is housing instability and economic security is really a struggle right now for the moms that we serve. Like I said, we started out with just teenage mothers, but now we've expanded to where we're doing mothers and children, actually 21 and up at this point. So I have the pleasure of actually working with adults at this time as well, where for so many years it was just youth. And I'm seeing the same issues. Our youth had nowhere to go, and we serviced them up to age 24 at the time. And the difference between now and then is that there was more resources available. I had partnerships, and there was, Section 8 housing and things of that nature, so that when they finished our program, they could be self-sufficient and independent. And now we have a lack of affordable housing. We have a hard time getting them to independence now. And so I guess the salaries have not caught up to the rent, and it's making it very challenging for us to get our moms and children independent.
Mhm.
Thank you. That's interesting because we never think about the fact that the context in which you work in some ways are actually deteriorating. We always think that things must be getting better. So thank you for helping us understand how the broader economic context is actually making it more difficult. I'd love to hear from some additional organizations. Would anyone else like to jump in?
Sure, and this is going to sound like a piggyback, to what Dawn just shared with us, but the affordable housing piece is pretty critical. We support survivors of domestic violence, and so once the women and children are safe and safely away from their abusers, then becomes the journey of like starting their new life and their new path. And what has been most difficult about that restart or new beginnings is the affordability piece and the housing piece. It's hard to get to a stage where you're dreaming and blossoming when your basic needs aren't met. And so it is taking longer to do that. I always share with people, like since I've been here so long, when I first started at the Women's Resource Center, we were in emergency shelters, what we called ourselves then, and families would come and stay with us for 30 days. And rarely did we follow up, but we knew the women were okay. They would move into their own apartments, they would get their new jobs, and new life would begin. That was after 30 days. I mean, now we're working with families for years at a time to get them to the point where just 30 years ago took a couple of months or less to do. So it is a critical piece and a lot of obstacles.
Well, that's really interesting. We'll unpack those in a moment, but it is interesting to hear how some of these problems almost start to feel and sound intractable, which I think can be quite challenging. I'd love to hear a little bit more about ACE and the population they serve, because I think it's quite different, the approach that they take. And perhaps you guys can help us understand a few of the most challenging issues that your populations face?
Absolutely. I'll jump in here. So ACE is an organization, again, that supports small businesses with access to loan capital, and we try to reduce barriers to capital. And we can support anyone, but we typically focus on populations that are overlooked and underserved by traditional banking institutions. We provide loan capital anywhere from $15,000 up to $1 million. Grace mentioned when we started, we were doing micro loans, so they were $500 to $5,000 in 4 counties, and now we pretty much cover the entire state. We launched into South Georgia last year. So the issues vary depending on where we are regionally, and some more rural populations in North Georgia and South Georgia. We have different types of challenges. Maybe our clients that we're working with have issues with getting access just to broadband. And then other clients that we're dealing with, I always say that there's a trust gap. There's a capital gap, and there's often a knowledge gap, right? Which leads to why we provide coaching and business advisory support. So that's not just transactional. We're looking to figure out how we can help businesses grow and ultimately sustain over time. And the reason really is because we know that small business ownership, similar to home ownership, is a pathway to wealth creation and a way to pull yourself up out of poverty, a way to have a level of financial independence for your family. So some of the pressing issues are definitely access to funding. If you're in any type of banking desert, particularly balancing, business, right? Like and personal life. I think that I always say you have to have intestinal fortitude to launch any type of business, that it takes what they call PhD, perseverance, heart, and determination, and also a lot of capital and support. And the important thing about what it is that we do is that small businesses also, not only, it creates this ripple effect when we support the small business owner. It doesn't just help them materialize their dreams, but it has this ripple effect where it helps to generate income for their staff. And when we're able to generate income for their staff, right, that oftentimes leads to financial stability in homes. And when you have financial stability in homes, research shows us that you also have thriving children and then more resilient communities. So overall, from an economic benefit standpoint, you're putting more money into the tax base for local economies. You're moving economies forward. And I think in the state of Georgia, women-owned businesses represent about 47% of the businesses that are here in the state.
One of the things that we did, I'm going to say about 10 years ago, and this is one of the ways that we met with AWF, is we recognize that Georgia is a state, one of the top 5 states in the country that has the most women-owned businesses and starting women-owned businesses. And we, as you can hear Martina talk, an essential piece of what we do is provide capital. But we've realized we need to do something more for women. So we created a women's business center. And it's called the Women's Business Center of Metropolitan Atlanta. And it is part of the SBA system. So we get a little bit of funding from the Small Business Administration. But the women that come there, a large portion of them are people who are either from programs like Dr. Dawn's and Jean's, or other types of services where they're trying to get those basic needs taken care of. So they come to the Women's Business Center for ideation. They're beginning to think, how can I support myself other than a job? Because for some people, they want to be self-employed. And then there's a large amount of people who want, they call it the gig economy now, but earlier what we called it is patching income. So you've got a job, maybe it's a part-time job, maybe it's full-time, doesn't pay you enough. So there's something that you do on the side that patches your income. So the Women's Business Center was started to reach people that are not borrowers and help them with still getting ready for capital if they were going to need it. If they don't need it, that's fine too. But to get them the coaching and the education and support to have choices in life.
So this is really helpful because what I hear all of you saying is that there are layers to the issues that your populations are facing, but there are also layers to the solution. So sort of building on what you guys have already started talking about with ACE, I want to go a little bit deeper into how you think about addressing these issues, particularly since we're seeing some situations seem to be intractable, most seem to be getting worse, and they're complex because there are layers to them. So since you've already started with ACE, telling us a little bit more about the way that the organization addresses these questions, I'd love to hear about specific outcomes and goals that you have and how your programming helps you create that intended impact. So either Grace or Martina, but I'd love to start with ACE since we already started to talk about some of your programming, and then we'll turn to the other organizations.
Yeah, well, as Grace mentioned, our Women's Business Center in partnership with the SBA has certain goals and targets around our outreach, how many trainings we do annually. We're actually celebrating 10 years for our WBC in terms of the Atlanta one, and they've done supported over 18,000 businesses since the launch, and done over 500 something trainings. And these trainings are all about ways to improve, get more knowledge, get more skills. So it could be about a certification. We partner with some of our corporate partners around subject matter expertise around cybersecurity and other things like that. And as far as ACE, as a larger organization, we also have a Women's Business Center, I want to say, in Savannah, Georgia, as well. So we have 2 WBCs. As a larger organization, our target last year was to put out 40 million in capital. And we put out 40.1 million in capital to small businesses that were in need. That supported just under 200 businesses. 52% of them were women. So our goals every year are making sure that we meet our target market, and that we have goals around making sure that we support those who are under-resourced in the market. And our goal we're in the middle of a strategic plan to do the top of year 3. So at the end by 2027, we hope to have put out 250 million in lending dollars, supporting 1,500 small businesses and providing about 100,000 hours of business consulting for those clients. And we expect that will help to support or sustain about 10,000 jobs in the state of Georgia. So those are some of our high level goals. And we are really appreciative. We've been able to work with Atlanta's Women's Foundation, as Grace has said, over the years, and particularly through the Women's Pathway to Success initiative that for 5 years was able to provide support to our WBC, and able to support women, particularly living at or below 200% of the federal poverty level in a few different counties, specifically Clayton, Cobb, DeKalb, Fulton, and Gwinnett. And so it was focused on helping them to obtain capital, and then providing them with the knowledge they needed, right, to ensure that those businesses were and are a success. Another thing that we offer through our Women's Business Center is something called Dream Builder. And it is an online educational platform of no cost to anyone who goes online and wants to use it. And it's a module system. It takes you to 10 or 12 modules that if you have a business idea, it will begin to create a business plan for you at the end, but it will talk to you, it will walk you through pricing, it will walk you through a lot of different components to better understand what the inputs need to be on the front end to make sure that you have success on the back end.
So I think that's fantastic. What I really appreciate from your model is that you recognize that you need to approach the problem from different sides. So it's not just about giving capital and then leaving people maybe lost about how to actually start the business, but it's about also giving them the education and consulting. So I think that's fabulous. And in a little while, we'll hear a little bit more about some examples of success. But before we do that, I want to turn the same question over to our other panelists. So I want to hear a little bit more about the specific incomes and targets. And when I say specific, they don't necessarily have to be quantitative, but specific income, specific targets and outcomes and goals that you guys have, and how the programming that you leverage helps you to create those intended impacts. So I'd love to hear from both Gina and Dawn about that, please.
Sure, I will pick up. I'll go to our strategic plan also that we completed towards the end of 2023. And I want to talk about the housing piece because that's one of the critical pieces that we have in our strategic plan, is to get to a point where 100% of the families that come into our safe house are able to go on to safe permanent housing once they leave our safe house. And so what that looks like is that we work with them for a number of years. I mean, when they first come into the safe house, there's a ready, set, go process that they go through, just to kind of help them get through the first 90 days or so of the program. And so that can look like recovering documents that you've lost, getting your children registered in school, and then those pieces. And then when it's time to launch and to move out of our safe house, then that's when our supportive services pick up. We work pretty closely with different housing authorities. We've been really fortunate to be able to get some vouchers for, women who've experienced domestic violence. And so once they get settled in their new place, which most times we furnish and get kids settled in school, and then we continue to work on like the educational components, that they need to move forward towards whatever dreams or goals that they have. I mean, some of them, like purchasing a home, is a dream and a goal. And so we do home buying seminars. We do a lot of education around financial literacy. We have a program that we created ourselves in-house, and we also reach out to our community partners to come in and do sessions in groups, with the women that we're serving. And then there is like the emotional and even physical well-being piece, that we address also. And so we have in-house therapy that happens in our home. And then we also, extend those services to families once they leave our safe house. And so we continue to work with that family unit for up to 3 years at a time, after they leave our safe house. So, and last year, I think 81% of the families that we supported remain in safe, stable homes right now. And so we're on our way. We're at 81%, striving for 100.
Wow, that's fantastic, Jean. Thank you. And what I'm hearing from you is, again, what I'm just echoing what I heard before, is that you're taking more of a sort of a wraparound approach, recognizing that there are layers to the challenges. And so I really appreciate us helping us understand that it's not sort of like a single program, but that there are multiple programs that help to address the different things that occur in the life of a woman escaping domestic violence. So thank you. And then Dawn, if we could hear a little bit more from you about the outcomes and the goals that you have and how your programs help you to create those intended impacts.
Yes. So I would say our outcomes and goals are stable housing, economic independence, educational advancement, and emotional and mental well-being. Those are usually the goals that we have for our mothers and families that we work with. We provide training. We come with a holistic approach to ensure that we try to make everything a one-stop shop. They can get everything that they need here. We bring trainers in-house, just as Jean said, and we just try to make sure that they get what they need so that when it is time for them to leave us, and we're actually fast tracking them now. And I'm enjoying the fast tracking because they're working harder. And I can't wait to share a success story, because I was a little afraid of the fast track. But it's actually working out better. It's pushing them a little more, it's putting a little fire up under them, and they're actually doing more. So I'm loving it.
So that's great. So again, what I'm hearing is that you need to take a holistic approach. And so what we're trying to set up and help our listeners understand is that all of these issues, even though you may go to the website of an organization and you may be able to describe in one sentence what they do, that underneath that, there's actually a lot more to unpack. And so what I'd love for you guys to tell us a little bit more about maybe 2 or 3 critical challenges your organization faces and what individuals, businesses, and communities can do to help overcome these obstacles and challenges. So maybe we'll just kind of go through each of the organizations and just I know there are probably a lot more than 2 or 3 challenges, but if you could just please unpack a few, that would be helpful.
I'm happy to kick us off with that. I mean, right now, I know many of us are experiencing, we're in kind of a bit of an uncertain economic environment, a lot of different policy shifts that are happening externally outside of our organizations that we have to all be responsive to. And because we do focus on small businesses, the shifts in the overall marketplace, whether it's around tariffs, which create increased cost, impact their business. And so when it impacts their business, it might increase the cost of goods sold for their products, increase the dollar amount of what it costs to get inventory. So they end up having maybe cash flow issues, being able to meet other obligations, whether that's payroll or something else. And so in turn, that comes back to us. So we are evaluating and managing risk from that portfolio from perspective to try to understand what are the risk that businesses are having to deal with, and then trying to get in front of them and have them do a bit of a risk assessment to see if they have exposure. Some of them may have federal contracts that have been paused, delayed, or ultimately canceled, and so now that may be a stream of revenue that they may not be having, may not have in the future. The other thing that we have to pay attention to, because we are an organization that provides loan capital, is the cost of capital. So interest rates are we went through a period post the financial crisis where they're at historical lows, and now they are actually sitting at their highest levels. The prime is one of the rates, and it's sitting at about 8% versus it's 2001 levels. And so we're at historically high interest rates. So everything is more expensive. The inflationary pressure that comes with all of these things and supply chain issues are something that we pay attention to. And so those are what we consider like economic shocks to the system. And then we kind of we have clients who are dealing with, especially during COVID, the ramp up to digitization of platforms, of how people do business. And so those are all things that require a new level of learning and skill and developing new muscle around that. So those are a couple of things that I would highlight that are current challenges that we are make sure we're paying attention to.
So thank you for highlighting that. And what was really interesting is to hear how you guys are getting ahead of that. So you're anticipating what your grantees are going to be facing, and then you're trying to go ahead and help them understand how to navigate that. Is there anything that the broader community, so individuals, businesses, can do to help you guys overcome those challenges? Or because they're so macro, that it's really more around sort of preparing your clients and helping them navigate it?
Well, in this particular case, yeah, it's for us, it's our borrowers in this case. And then and in terms of how people can support, ACE is a nonprofit organization. We're a mission-based lender. So 50% of our work is based off the we provide affordable capital. So we are profit making, but not profit maximizing. So we get some funding from the loans that we do, but the rest of it is through the grants that we receive to support the operations of our business, to support the educational arms of our business in terms of business advisory services and our WBCs, or our women's business centers, not to use an acronym. And so we would encourage anyone who is interested in the work of supporting small business, supporting economic growth, supporting women succeed, all of those things. We are an organization that's been here for 25 years with an amazing track record of success, and we'd love to talk about partnerships and ways that we can work together to continue to move the mission forward.
Thank you. That's very helpful, Martina. So I'd love to hear from either Jean or Dawn next, again, just trying to unpack some of the challenges that you guys face in achieving your mission, and perhaps any ways that individuals or businesses or communities can rally and help you guys overcome and at least confront those challenges.
I would say one of the big challenges now, to kind of pick up on Martina, is some of the uncertainty that we face right now. And like, what does that mean for the families that we serve? What will that mean for some of the resources that we have been able to rely upon over the last few years? But it seems like every year, someone mentioned COVID, like post-COVID, like what we did before COVID, this looks different, right? Since 2000, and now we're in 2025, and like, what kind of shifts will we need to do right now? And we don't exactly know. But we are trying to prepare the families that we're working with for some of the changes, And one of the things that we really push and advocate for a lot with the women and families that we serve is interdependence, that we learn to connect and share resources and share solutions with each other. And we also need a community that will show some grace and some forgiveness, you know? If someone has had an eviction because there was domestic violence in their background, like how do we get you to like not consider that, you know, in going forward so that she doesn't need $10,000 to move into an apartment, you know? That's one of the things, you know, again, back to the housing piece, you know, how astronomical it's gotten for us and for her, you know, just to get resettled is is definitely challenging. And so we're better together though. I mean, the more we can bring our resources together in solidarity and share around childcare, you know, around transportation, around housing costs is one of the things that we're really trying to get our families to consider more so than they have before.
So I really appreciate this notion of interconnectedness. So connected to that, are there any things that people in the broader community or businesses can do to help you guys overcome some of these challenges?
Yeah, I think greater understanding about what the families that we're working with are actually dealing with and facing, and some allowances, you know, because I mean, this is something that's happened to her. It's not something that's her fault, you know, that she created. It is, you know, a life turn that she's taking. And so, yeah, so some support and some thinking outside of the box.
Thank you. That's great, Jean. And then Don, again, same question. We just want to understand some of the major challenges that you guys face in your program delivery and in being able to create the impacts that you intend, but then also any ways that the broader community, so individuals, businesses, can help you guys overcome some of those challenges.
Right. So I would have to say, and I'm piggybacking off everyone else, funding is what we need because the rising costs of rent causing the lack of affordable housing is a major challenge and barrier for us. With our program, even the inflation of expenses, just everyday liability insurance, I mean, everything, utilities, everything has gone up, but our funding has gone down, and we're continuing to support the families to ensure that, you know, the mothers and the children have a safe haven. And so with that, it has really turned into this mom who is working, she's doing what she needs to do, but because she's a single mom, she don't make 3 times the rent. Maybe if she had a husband, the two of them would make 3 times the rent. But in this day and time, you need 2 people. So she doesn't even qualify for an apartment. So we remove those barriers of she doesn't have to make 3 times the rent. We do eviction forgiveness. Her credit score can be a little lower, and we're going to work with her and put her in workshops to get that credit score up so that we can get her on her feet and refer her possibly for home ownership. So these are the things that are challenges for us, and it's becoming more and more of a challenge. And basically, our funding gives a rental subsidy so that we can still manage all the inflation that and costs that we have, but still give them a discount on their rent to where it's affordable and they can have a stable environment. As far as helping, it truly it just takes funding, it takes understanding, it takes an open mind, a big heart to truly see what these families are struggling with, what they're going to continue to struggle with for a while, unless we can get them to a level of independence. And it actually just takes resources for us to do that.
Well, thank you. I thank each of you for helping us understand the importance of the work that you do, the critical times that we're in, how a lot of things that perhaps feel more difficult, there's sort of this negative outlook. And so before we finish this part of the conversation, I don't want to leave us with sort of a pessimistic view. I want us to highlight some success stories and case studies of things that have gone really well. So I'd love it if each of you would love to just jump in and tell us a little bit more about a success story or a time when you really started to see the impact of the work that you're doing and how it changed people's lives.
Mhm.
Who would like to go first? Jean?
I'll start. Yeah, so we have a survivor that we were connected because Grady Hospital reached out because she was in the hospital due to the abuse. And so we connected with her. She decided that it was a trial run, and so she went back to her abuser, and then she left again. And so she came back to the safe house again, stayed for a number of months, that ready, set, go process that we talked about. And then she was able to get a housing voucher. And so she was able to go into that program and then participate in the other supportive services that we have also. And then, the person that had been abusing her, unfortunately lost their lives, but didn't remove her name from an insurance policy. So with that, you know, being the beneficiary of that policy allowed her to put a down payment on a house. And so now she is living in a home, uh, generating the wealth, right? That Martina has spoken about, a way to, get some equity and start building wealth for herself and her family. And so they are safe and sound after almost 3.5 years.
Thank you for sharing that story, Jean. Would
Great
anyone else like
story.
to jump in with a success story?
I will.
Yes, Don.
It it was different for us because after so many years, House of Dawn, like I said, we did youth. We serviced young mothers and their children, but they were youth, and we went up to the age of 24. And so now, actually, it going beyond the age of 24 and working with adults, it was a little different. And so we just literally had our first success story. We changed the program 3 years ago, and that first year was real rocky. First year was very rocky. And the last 2 years, we're really seeing the outcomes. But we had a mom who, when she came to us, she was not able to rent an apartment. She was working, and we rented her a room. It was her and her newborn baby, and we rented her a room, a private bedroom, private bathroom. I had a work from home job. And then she was actually able to rent an apartment. She had enough money to rent an apartment from us, with below market value rent. So we moved her into her apartment. She had 2 additional children that was with, her ex-husband. And so she was able to bring her kids home. So now she has all 3 of her children. So we have family, reunification. She's living in an apartment, on our campus, and she was struggling with transportation. She had a work from home job, but she got laid off, and she was spending $30 each way on an Uber, getting back and forth to work, which was really cutting into her money. And so it started another program for us. We started our own Wheels to Work program and started renting a couple of cars on Turo, that if you're in the program, you could rent the car to get back and forth to work. And we did it for like $30 a day versus them paying $30 each way. And on the days that you work, and she was working 12-hour days. So the days that she worked, she had a vehicle. For those that usually 3 days a week, she was working, had a vehicle, and she just got her income tax back, and she does not have to rent anymore. She paid cash for a car. So she has an apartment, she has her children, and she has a vehicle, and she's working.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that story. And then perhaps Ace, if you guys would like to leave us with a high note and help us understand a success story.
Sure. Didn't we say there's been 2,700 borrowers? And in the early days, I actually knew each and every one of them. Now, not so much. But I want to tell you about Ardina Pierre. Ardina Pierre is the owner of Nature's Own Herb Shop. This is a commercial for her. See, this is a little bit different because we usually can talk by name about our customers, clients, borrowers. It helps them. She has a herb shop in Hapeville, and she's a nurse, and she decided that she wanted to use alternative forms to help people. Now, in Hapeville, was not the Hapeville that we know today. Hapeville was very poor, and the land values were not very high. So she had the opportunity to buy her shop in a little shopping strip. I mean, we're talking about maybe 4 little businesses in there. So she came to us to see if we would help her because the banks had already said no. And we were able to figure out how to help her buy this little shopping center or shopping strip. So she went on to work with our Women's Business Center for the education and became part of an educational cohort that we called the High Performing Group, HPG. It used to be High Potential Group, and then they said, "Hey, we're not potential anymore. We're performing." And so she went on to have, with that high performing group, they had one-on-one at her business consultations with a financial consultant that worked for us. It's a contractor that we hired. And would help her look at her inventory, look at her financial statements, her cash, help her understand and how she could grow. Roll the clock forward. Today, she has her 2 shops. She has the one in Hapeville and one that her son runs in North Atlanta. And I always tease her when I go there. And when you go there, there's just traffic all the time, people coming in and out to talk to her because of her knowledge about homeopathy. So I tell her, who would have thought, that your business, which was such a tiny niche business or niche business, would be in an area of such high growth. So the business is doing well, but her biggest asset, of course, is that shopping strip that she owns in Hapeville, which is now, who knows what it's worth. So that's one of those, that's an extreme example of success, but one of my favorite because it is like luck. What do they say about luck? It's the intersection of preparedness and opportunity.
Well, thank you guys so much for sharing these success stories. It's really exciting to see how your organizations are making such critical differences in the lives of women and girls across the state. As you guys know, this Women's History Month, we're highlighting and celebrating the critical role of education, leadership, and mentoring as catalysts for change. And I told a friend of mine who posted on LinkedIn a quote that I was going to steal her quote for today's webinar. So I'm going to steal it, except I'll give her credit for it. This is not my quote, it's Sarah Fryer. But she said the best mentors don't just offer advice. They expand possibilities, they open doors, challenge perspectives, and instill confidence to take the next step. And I think that's really beautifully said, which is why I told her I was going to steal it. What I'd love to hear before we start to wrap up is I would just like to understand your own personal journeys with mentoring. And so if maybe a couple of you want to share stories either from the perspective of the mentee, so sharing how someone along your journey poured into you and how that made a difference in your life, or as from the perspective as a mentor, how you pouring into someone, how you've been able to see that outgrowth. Because I think we can all appreciate and understand, no matter what walk of life we come from or what we do, we can understand the importance of having other people to support us and to pour into us. So I'd love to hear just a couple, we don't have a lot of time left, but I'd love to hear just a couple of stories around the importance of mentoring. Would anyone like to jump in?
I will. Like I said, I also have, I'm the founder of Nonprofit Success, where I help people start their nonprofits. And the mentorship that I've done over the years of helping people start a nonprofit has been amazing. And I went to a fundraiser of one of my mentees, and she was doing her 10-year fundraiser. And I said, wow, wait a minute. Has it been 10 years since I helped you get started? Then how old is Nonprofit Success? And we realized it was 11 years old. But of course, I was doing it way before then. But it's a joy and an honor to be able to help like-minded people that want to serve their communities. That leadership, that mentorship is important for, I feel like I've been blessed to have learned so much. I thought it was very hard in the beginning. I couldn't find anybody to help me. I was figuring things out on my own, but now I know why I had to walk that journey so that I'm able to help as many other people as possible.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That recognition that sometimes we walk a certain journey, not only for our own experience, but because then we can turn around and leverage that experience to help someone else. I'd love to hear one more story about the importance of mentorship, if anyone else would like to chime in.
This is Mark. Oh, Grace, you want to do it?
Hey, are we mentor and
Yeah,
mentee?
I think so.
Go ahead.
Certainly. I'll make a quick comment about Grace. It's important to definitely have people, like you said in that quote, who will push you beyond what you feel like you can do. And so Grace often says, you have enough, you are enough, you do enough. And I've had a lot of great folks throughout my life in various roles, from leaving rural Alabama, going up to New York City, starting my career on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And I think it's really important to have, beyond just an ally, an advocate or a sponsor. And so for me, that was really effective during my time in New York City, where I became the first African-American female broker to work on the floor of the stock exchange for Merrill Lynch. And I had someone who was willing to go, kind of behind closed doors and speak on my name in a positive manner, and kind of pound their fist on the table and say that she deserves a shot for this opportunity based off the not just the aptitude and the attitude, but the performance that I had exhibited in an environment that was lacking women and male dominated. So I would say that's certainly important. I was able to give my time, talent, and treasure back to the organization that helped me get my foot in the door to Wall Street for 5 years. Running an alternative investments program in New York City, helping first and second year investment banking analysts more effectively compete for roles in private equity. And many of them have gone on now, like they are CEOs of global organizations, run their own shops, and I'm very proud of that. And certainly proud of the work that I do here in Georgia, also serving on the Leadership Council for Junior Achievement of Georgia, where we're focused on helping youth better understand how to understand finances, being more financially literate, and what decisions today, how they will impact their future, and how to be productive members of society. So those are a couple of ways that I give back to the community, and how people have actually poured into me.
Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time to share your experience, your expertise, for helping us unpack and understand the populations that you serve and just how important the work is that you do. We can't finish this webinar, however, without highlighting the importance of the work and the contributions of AWF. And as a lot of us know, the AWF model is one that emphasizes collaboration, strategy, research, and this whole idea of collective impact. And we even sort of joked before we started the conversation that even just waiting in the green room for this conversation, that there was a connection that was happening. And so AWF's role also as a connector. And so I would love just for each organization to take 1 minute, because we're out of time, to just discuss the importance of AWF's support, because we understand that it's more than just writing a check, that it's really so much broader and so much more important. And I would love to just highlight that before we wrap up.
The very first site visit I had as executive director was with the Atlanta Women's Fund. It was Atlanta Women's Fund then, I think. Yeah, before it was Atlanta Women's Foundation. And I remember how comfortable our organization was in sharing a realistic picture of what we were facing and the work that we wanted to do. And I thought that's how it would be with all of our funders, but I learned, shortly that they don't all want to hear what your challenges are and your out of the box or even some of your more radical ideas. And so I think from the very beginning, I've known that the Atlanta Women's Foundation is innovative and supportive and a great connector of people. All the introductions that I've had as a result of my connection with the Atlanta Women's Foundation, connecting with other women, connecting with mentors, has been a really important part of my career and our work here at the Women's Resource Center. Like, they believed in us when not a lot of people did. And you don't ever forget that.
Thank you, Jean. That was beautifully stated. Could I hear from either
Well
Dawn
said.
or Martina or Grace?
Sure, I'll go next. I must say that it's been such a beautiful experience. Like Jean said, Atlanta Women's Foundation believed in me. when I first started 25 years ago, I was not most second chance homes, which is what I started with. They were under a larger umbrella. They had all of this funding. And for whatever reason, I don't know why DeShonda believed in me, but you did. And I thank you for that. Because 25 years later, the amount of families that we have supported has been invaluable. The partnerships, the relationships, it was not just funding, but the partnerships and the relationships have been amazing. And I thank Atlanta Women's Foundation. It's been a wonderful ride.
Thank you, Dawn. And then lastly, could we hear from Ace?
And the benefits of those relationships over the years, we're still enjoying them. Just like Julie said in the green room, Dr. Dawn, Jean, Martina, and I had not met. We just knew of each other's organizations. And we have even talked about getting together now to brainstorm ideas about how we can connect to deal with this uncertainty. Thank you. That is a benefit that's, I can't say it's greater than money, but perhaps it's equal to the money. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Grace. Well, thank you all so much for spending your lunch with us and taking the time. I'm going to pass it back over to Kari to close us. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you all so very much, Julie, for leading this conversation, Jean, Martina, Grace, and Dr. Dawn for participating and sharing your experiences and helping us to understand the real landscape and what all the organizations are up against. Each of you are embodiment of our mission to be a catalyst for change. You all have been changing our community for quite some time. And so we thank you so much for that. Another person who's been changing our community for quite some time is our fabulous Chief Mission Officer, DeShonda Hughes, who will be celebrating her 25th anniversary in April, early April, April the 3rd. And so thank you for your commitment also, DeShonda, leading AWF for all of these years. One last thing before we go, I want y'all to be amongst the first to know, and maybe you've seen this in your emails, but we're so excited to announce that Hoda Kotb from I think recently from the Today Show will be our speaker for the Numbers Luncheon this fall in October, late October. She will be, I'm sure, very inspiring and have looking forward to having her with us. One last thing, special thanks to our partner Liger, who works with us to do our marketing and communications that helped to set up this webinar. And Vantan Abernathy, thank you for running it so beautifully behind the scenes, and everyone who else has been involved. And thank you all for joining us, and hope you have a great rest of the day.